many of you got to look at the wonderful old board that's in the exhibit room? It's the board from Town Farm Wagon number 4 in the exhibit room, because tonight's talk really began with that board. Last year, Barbara decided that the Historical Society might be interested in having it. Her father had kept the old board through the years, and she hadn't parted with it when she and her husband sold the house in 2001. So she gave the board to her good friend Sally Blakely, who's a society member, and Sally brought it over to deliver to us, which she did. Sally and I got chatting, and one thing led to another, and Barbara was persuaded to come from Branford tonight to tell us about the town farm. So it is a great pleasure to introduce her. Barbara is the daughter of Wilbur Buckland, who managed the town farm from 1929 until the town discontinued the operation in 1938, and then bought the property. Barbara's a Cheshire native. She lived on the farm growing up and then later raised her own family there. She was an active member of the DAR when she was here in Cheshire, and she's used some of those good genealogy and research skills to look into the farm's history. So it's with great pleasure to welcome Barbara and her husband Al. Al, raise your hand, who's come with her. And, so Barbara. I know.
I might have to walk down because I'm not used to talking loud. Mary Ellen said I should talk like I hollered out. But it's so good to see the DAR ladies and the Humiston classmates.
Here, here.
This map was made, I don't know if everyone knows where the farm is. It still is there. It's between Weiss Road and Route 70. Scenic Court comes right into the driveway into the farm. Now I want you to look at Scenic Court because I'm going to tell something later on. I have to find Scenic Court. Look, Scenic Court, there's a little dip, a little bend. All right, you're going to have to remember that bend. The poor farm developed early from the first day of the settlements in Connecticut. Each town had a place for the poor. The first poorhouse was in 1640 in Hartford, along the Connecticut River. And usually the people who came to the poor farm, if they could do some work, they did it. They didn't do a lot of manual work. Or they could help, I guess, in the gardens or what. They did that. There was one woman that was there for years and years and years. She was in the kitchen. I remember that one. She was in the kitchen. In 1850, Hannah Brown owned the property on what is now Country Club Road, and she sold it to the farm for the poorhouse. There was also 15 acres across the street at your bend there in Scenic Court. This was a wooded lot that was for wood to keep the house warm. It was heated by stoves. William Brown owned that property, and that's the farmhouse that is across from the one where the farm is. There's an old farmhouse across the street. That was William Brown's house and property. East of that property was a right-of-way for us to get to the back to get the wood. Also, just a little note, the right-of-way also went into an orchard for Bishop's Farm. West of his property, which is Applewood, was a big apple orchard also for Bishop's. In 1900, the town hall has a record. The new house was built, which still stands. The original house, which sat if you go up the driveway on the right, was moved to the back. And there are no fireplaces in this house.
Wow.
No, until we put one in 1995. And growing up there, let me tell you, it was cold in the winter, being on a knoll, no central heat, and no insulation. We heated it with stoves. There was a stove in the basement, 2 on the first floor and 1 on the second floor. And why the place never burnt, I'll never know. We had an ice house in the backyard, and the ice was cut from a pond in the back, which has stopped being there since the builders came in. They would bring the ice into the ice house. Next to the ice house was a big, long wood shed where the wood was kept. Now we had a tramp house on the farm. The tramp house had a dirt floor, had a stove in the middle, had bunk beds on 3 sides, but these beds were from the wall. And the interesting thing, they had 3 windows, and they had bars on the window. Why? I have no idea. Because I don't think my father locked the door at night. I don't know.
Did the tramps stay there?
Yeah, that burnt. That burnt in 1950. That's the only thing that ever burnt on the place. They had to go to get a pass to spend the night. And they went to Virgie Norton, who was first selectman at that time. The house is on Academy Road. Now it's the Norton Brothers farm. And food, you weren't supposed to give them food. But my mother was a good cook, kind-hearted soul, and she would give them anything from donuts to bread to pastry and food. And the tramp will leave a mark on the house. I wish I had kept an article they had many, many years ago about their markings. There was a page full of markings that they had. But one would be vicious dog, mean housewife, or good food. So to tell you how that works, in 1930 they had 148 tramps.
Wow.
31, 221. 1932, 395.
Word spread.
Yeah. 1933 was the bumper year. It was 471.
Oh my.
Then 34 to 37, it dwindled down to low 300s or high 200s. Now, I was going to show you, I'll have to walk down. This was taken from an aerial, I think, in 1970. This is the original house that was moved back.
Your finger's in the way.
I see where
Yeah,
the spot
I see
is.
it, yeah, right.
And I think I found a lot of chains and bolts and stuff. The town trucks were kept at the place for many years. And they repaired things in here because I found a lot of remnants.
Good for the scrap. What was the average stay of a person that came?
You mean the thing in the house?
Yeah,
Well, the woman was there, I think, all her life.
other than she.
Another man was there for about several years. And some were half a year, some were several months.
I remember nothing. But then he went to that Waterbury and then.
How many trucks were housed
Bring it
there?
back.
Three, I think. The old GMC.
Oh, sure.
Where was the tramp house?
Back ball and chain, straight jacket.
Yeah.
Well, no, we donated to us. We have to get some praise off. That's right.
Susie was your mother's aunt? Susie,
This picture, if everyone can see it, it's not,
town clerk.
up here is an older picture. On these steps, there are two doorways you can see when you come up here. The doorway to the left went upstairs to the town people where they stayed. The door to the right went to the kitchen. And now, there also was a door in here where they could come in, the town people, and they sat and ate at this end of the house. These rooms up here, upstairs, all belong to for the town people. The back end of the house.
How many rooms were there for?
Well, it's hard because I was very young. But you could see in the roofs where some of them had been petitioned off. So there was, well, you could have 6, 7 rooms. Down here would be our dining room, and back of this dining room on the back side was the kitchen. And we were in the front.
Barbara, did they have beds with sheets, or did they just sleep with whatever they had on cots? I don't remember ever talking about that.
I couldn't tell you. I probably would say just the cot. I have no idea. They didn't have wash machine.
No, you would have been out there scrubbing on that washboard.
Well, people probably wonder how we happened to get to the poor farm. My father worked at Gaylord's, and Gaylord's in the early 1900s was a tuberculosis sanitarium. I don't think you all know that. Big dairy there, he was in the dairy. And then he left there for a few years trying to sell milk machines, but times were hard, farmers weren't buying. So he went back to Gaylord to see if they could use them again. And they said, well, we've heard Cheshire needs a manager for the town farm and manage the roads. And he came over and spoke to Frank Rice, whose home is now Slater Funeral Home. That's where Frank Rice lived. And so he was hired. And my parents and my brother moved in December of 1929. I came in 31. And when he worked the roads, he worked the roads. You have to remember, town roads back then were manual labor. They shoveled the sand by hand, they did everything. There's some of the old equipment. They have, well, Mary Ellen has it marked. There's Spring Street, there's Brooksville Road. There's a picture on Diamond Hill of the snow. And it just shows the old equipment.
I remember that. Those gravel roads.
And the one thing I find interesting, at least it's to me, everybody who has lived or managed this farm since 1900 to 201, their last names began with B. Bennett was 1900, Barnes was 1904, Baldwin 1916, Buckland 1929, and
In Musk.
and then we came back actually in 67. We helped my father, and then when he passed away, then you know we took care of it.
Was that John Baldwin that ended up owning the farm on South Meriden Road?
I don't know.
Probably Joseph. And Barbara, you forgot to tell us again that the roads were gravel, they were dirt roads. They weren't macadam, or they weren't even oiled or tarred, they were just gravel.
Right.
And then they used to go by it just about when school started and put the tar on the roads, and my mother said, just in time to ruin your clothes for school. And she used to tell my brother, don't you get in that tar, and of course they always did.
That's where they went.
Of course.
In 1936, when Social Security came in, the farms all started to dissolve. And at a March meeting in 36, the selectmen, who were Birdsey Norton, Huxley, and a Murphy, and they met at a town meeting, and that's when they said they were going to close the farm. And my father had first choice to buy, and so he got it, but it took till 1938 to get it. And I think mainly because they had to get rid of the equipment. They still had people there in 37, so it took a while to change it around. Now, I had someone here from Weiss Road wondering if her property was part of the farm, and it was. The farm went along Weiss Road. The poor farm included the Legion Field. When we bought it, they took about 8 to 10 acres out for Legion Field, and that's a big house for 4 people. We moved to the back now, and the place where the town people sat and ate, that became our kitchen. And so in 39, they made a tourist home out of it, which would be a bed and breakfast now. There was a huge sign down by the intersection of Route 10 and Country Club Road, indicating where to come. And my mother didn't just make breakfast, she made 3 meals a day. And after maybe the first year, people came for a week. You know, and
Good food.
she was a good cook. I said it was a good thing I didn't get married with her. She was still cooking, because I would. Then after, in about 44, now he made apartments out of the front. So there's our 2 apartments in the front. And that, in 1944, that's when we finally got central heat. Now, the Rotary Club was organized at a dinner meeting at the farm. And she made a home-style meal. And you have no idea how much it cost. It was $1. And 10-cent tip. And it only lasted 4 months because it became too much, because a lot of Rotarians would come and visit for the meeting. So much more. Now, when the property was sold in 1986, we bought back the buildings and the 4 acres. And then we sold it in 2001. It got to be a little bit too much to keep up. And the builder at that time gave the town some more land to expand the ball field. So that's how it got to be that big. Wait, did I finish about Weiss Road? I think, yeah, Weiss Road was part of the farm, but, years ago, the politicians, I hope there's no politicians here, decided they were gonna charge taxes by frontage. Well, the farmer, he can figure out what to do, so he sold the frontage on Weiss Road.
Smart move.
And when the ball field, the first was there when I was a kid, they had donkey baseball games, do you remember them? Yeah. They were the funniest things, because they'd hit the ball and they'd have to get on this donkey and try to make them go around the base.
Jeez.
I don't know, I guess that's it. If you have any questions, I'll attempt to, I will say one thing in the Cheshire Herald, I did read the article this week, the tramps did not eat in the house.
Oh.
We could be, if we happened to go to town, which wasn't often, you'd see one and you know they were coming to the house.
Well, how do they get their food? The tramps.
Well, my mother would just hand them it on something, or give them a loaf of bread or
I see.
cake or.
I see.
They had routes, Martellum, where they went around town and they knew where to stop to eat. And my mother, I mean, Cheshire was not a thriving metropolis at the time, and I was one of 8 children, but we always had food because we were self-sufficient in our gardens and fruit trees and so on. And they came to my mother's all the time, and she would offer them to come in, and they'd say, "Oh, no, 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 missus." And they would sit in the woodshed on a chopping block, and she would feed them. Of course, in those days, probably there weren't paper plates, but they ate on the dishes that we were eating on, and, were very courteous and so on and so forth. But they were there all the time, and we wondered why they never stopped at the neighbors. Well, maybe the neighbors weren't such a good cook as my mother, or as hospitable either, and I think it was the 2 factors.
Say a little bit more about these tramps. Now, these are itinerant people who drop in for a night or a longer period of
Well, I
time?
think they have
Are they what we call homeless today?
Oh, yeah, but they had a circuit, I think, they walked a certain route. And you figured the marking for this property had to be on Route 70. Because we were on Country Club Road, so there was somewhere up there, they had a mark.
So they went from one place to another.
Now, Barbara, did they
nights
work
there.
on the farm itself? There was
Not
no
the
work?
tramps, not
In
the
other
tramps.
words, there were no gardens.
Oh, yeah, we
Well, there
had
were gardens, but the tramps didn't work for their keep there at all.
No.
Okay.
But the
I thought
people,
maybe
the town
they
people,
just
the
came and
town
spent the
poor.
night. I thought maybe they worked.
Yeah,
for
oh,
their
no,
keep,
I mean,
you know.
we
But,
canned, my mother canned, I canned up to 200s, 2,000.
2,000.
I mean, I
2,000
canned and
jars.
froze, and I can show you this. You see all these brown spots?
That's what gardens.
Wasn't garden.
those are the
This was
gardens.
the early garden.
Yeah.
This was the summer garden, and this was the fall garden. And the one job I hated in the spring was picking up rocks when he wheeled Harold.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're,
Do you remember the airplane crash in 42, I think it was, and how did that affect,
No, I mean, I remember, because I was,
did any parts land on?
oh no, it's not close to
It's not clear enough. Was that farther down, like behind us?
Wolf Hill Road.
You're talking about the airplane crash?
Yeah,
That was on a Copper Valley.
yeah.
that wasn't, but
Where Copper
But I-
Valley, that's where it crashed.
the, airplane traffic though would run over her property, would it not?
I don't know what, they don't run now over it, so I don't know what, the roof
Right,
comes
I
out,
watched it.
comes out of Waterbury, I think.
It was on fire when it was up in the air.
January
I was
20th,
doing my usual
1946.
daydreaming. Out the window.
Well, it happened when we were in school, now don't forget, we had to go out of town to school.
Yeah, there's no
We
schools.
chose either New Haven or Waterbury. I chose Waterbury, my brother went to New Haven, and I said I'd never go to New Haven because they had split sessions. First 2 years, went in the afternoon now? He went there, he came here. But anyways, he'd come home in the dark, and he'd leave in the dark. And I said, no. But we had to get downtown. There was no buses out there. You had to get to town and then the bus would take you into Waterbury or New Haven. And the only privilege the town did give us, if we came home in the afternoon, not that my mother went to town very often, but if she was there, she'd pick us up, or we walked, or the town let us ride the grammar school bus home.
We had a school bus.
There was a
I went
trolley.
to Crosby, and we had a school bus.
From where?
That's what I wanted to ask. When does trolley end?
Well, yeah, but we had to get to town.
No, I went.
Was the trolley gone by 30?
Trolley took your ass and
And you wanted more privilege.
Yeah, we had a
We had, I picked it up on the corner by the post office. They did have a bus that went down Route 10, right, that, called the Will Be bus.
What school, which one did you go to?
Crosby.
I don't remember that.
Oh, yeah, all right, is there one more question anybody wants to ask? I do want, maybe Marshall, are you too far back to come
Oh,
show
that's
what you
right.
bought at the town farm? At Barbara's
Well, he can
sale?
pick up the ball and chain. There's a ball and chain down here on the floor and a straitjacket. These were in the attic.
Oh, my goodness.
My goodness, they really used them.
Wow.
They must have.
Put them in reserve perhaps.
We played with it when we were kids. They were in there.
I'll be darned. Look at that ball and chain down
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, that was kind of.
And this is hand sewn. And Mary Casey, I do remember, you have to remember, I was like 6 when it was dissolved. But I remember her leaving, she left in an ambulance and they took her to Middletown.
Well, Barbara, it's been wonderful,
Yes,
and thank you very, very much. Don Turcott is not here, is he? He said he might come. Don and Tracy Turcott are living in that beautiful, it's a beautiful house now, really, with swimming pool. I mean, it's very lovely.
Well,
They absolutely love it, yes, if you have a chance, after, come and take a
Turn it
look
over.
at some of, the Turcotts put the pool in, did they?
Yeah, exactly.
well, he told us, we stopped in it 2 times, I'm sorry, Mary. And he said, I'm going to restore it to the original, so we saw him putting the pool in, I said, we didn't know. I'd hate to tell you where we swam. Did you swim in the same places, on Country Club Road and the river? Oh.
It's a wonderful, Barbara, thank you so much. I
have one quick picture. That's unique. Here's the Meriden Journal being delivered by horseback. You can pass it around.
We're going to have some refreshments in the dining room in a couple of minutes. Barbara, thank you. I hope you'll all